Well, look who's back with episode number 7. It is Lost in Postulation once again. Delighted to be back. I'm Neil Fitzpatrick, and joining me, as always, is Nicola Volpe.
Yes, great to be invited back for a 7th episode.
7 in a row.
Unbelievable.
What are the chances?
Haven't missed one. How about that?
What are the chances? We actually saw some rules of thumb online suggesting that for new podcasts, it's around this time that most people get either demoralized or bored, or maybe it already fulfilled or it already ticked whatever box they had. And most people seem to stop around 7.
Yeah.
From my side, I can tell you, I don't intend to stop. I don't know about you.
We're not leaving.
We're not leaving.
We're not leaving.
There's a GIF that we could, if this was a video podcast, there's a GIF we could insert. But it's looking good. And thanks everybody. As ever, thank you so much to everybody for all the nice words, the feedback, the listens. We love those. We love the 5-star reviews as well. Please keep those coming. Those are really nice.
Coming. Those are great. 4 stars, decent, but the 5s are fantastic.
I'll take a 4 at this stage. Yeah, I mean, we're in early days.
Yeah, absolutely.
We love the shares. We certainly love one particular thing, which is we received the first of what is hopefully many listener postulations. We got a listener postulation in, and we're going to take that this episode. So final section of this episode is a listener postulation, which I'm very much looking forward to.
Very exciting. Very exciting.
So lots on the agenda. Before we get into it, just a quick reminder, we are on Twitter. We are at In Postulation on Twitter. There was not enough space for Lost, but that's okay. Slowly climbing the old follower count there, and we would love your support as always. And you can get in touch with us via Gmail. That is at lostinpostulation@gmail.com. That address was not taken, so we didn't.
And that is postulation, not population.
As we feel necessary to remind.
And to remind ourselves as well.
Oh, true. We get it wrong on a regular basis. But with that said, I think it's time to jump into our opening postulation, which is more of an update from my side.
Yeah.
On the way here, I was reflecting a bit on my energy levels, and I realized, hey, I might benefit from a little kick.
Yeah.
But I've already had 2 coffees today, and I was like, well, I'm on my way. I'm on the go. So I succumbed to something which I wouldn't normally do. I went through phases, but I wouldn't normally do this. But I walked into a 7-Eleven, and fresh from our episode last week where we talked about Austrian beverage companies, I picked up from the shelf a Red Bull.
Look at you in another effort to bridge a gap to our Austrian listeners, to present a bit of an olive branch.
Exactly. I was going to say, let's take this as my heartfelt condolences to the Austrian listeners after the last episode, to Christoph specifically.
Yeah.
No regrets. I stand by what I said, but I can understand if they're hurting right now.
Okay, so you took a Red Bull, and thoughts?
Well, the thing, first of all, is I drink a crazy amount of coffee anyway.
Right.
Filter coffee, which is like the highest level of caffeine. So
full black.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh, yeah. No milk ever, right? So my tolerance is probably pretty high, I would say, as a start, as a baseline.
Yeah.
So that said, this is still a lot of caffeine. I may have drank it fairly quickly. So you could say I'm feeling some caffeine buzz right now. Yeah. I'm talking at a slightly higher words per minute than normal. So
slow him down to 0.8, guys.
Everyone just go into your podcast apps and slow me down. That'll be great. But I don't think anyone buys it for the taste necessarily. The taste reminds the drinker of dance floor and nightclub situations.
Very.
Jaeger bombs and regrets. So
not just the taste, I mean the smell as well, right?
Oh, the smell hits you first. You crack that can, and you can even be outside, you can be anywhere, and that smell is going to hit you. However, it does exactly what I wanted, which was deliver a high dosage of caffeine at a short notice.
There you go.
What's your energy drink policy?
I'm not an energy drink. I mean, I'm so wired just from 2 coffees a day. So the espresso does the work for me. And I'm so sensitive to the caffeine, actually, that anything after 2 p.m.,
oh yeah,
I won't be able to sleep.
Tossing and turning.
That's how. Now, as a kid, I used to have like Coca-Cola much more often, even for dinner, whatever. I don't know if it's a significantly lower dosage of caffeine in the Coca-Cola, or if I've just
I think it must
grown
be
used to not having such a high intake anymore.
But it's so good. I mean, like for someone who, as you do, runs and exercises so much, it's probably a good thing that you don't rely. You get your energy from, actual exercising rather than
get
from
your heart rate up that way,
caffeine.
Right?
Yeah. And I mean, there's plenty of research out there and discussion about, are we all addicted to caffeine as the world's most legal drug? Is it like causing us damage?
Could very well be.
The jury is out on this, by the way. There's some interesting debates on both sides. Yeah. But it's something that you kind of go through phases of, and I'm hopefully not going to fall off the wagon and start drinking a load of Red Bull again. But
I'll tell you what I do, though, and a lot of runners do, especially on the longer runs, is energy gels.
Oh yeah, a little squeezy. Yeah.
That's more also to get those kind of minerals back into your body, which you're exerting, but they do have a huge impact. So like over a marathon, for example, I'll have a belt on with 7 to 8 of these gels.
Are they?
And I'll have almost all of them.
Are they more dextrose though, or they're like they're more sugar than?
Yeah, also, they're isotonic, so I don't need to combine it with water. I can just kind of shove it down, and then the key is to do it not when you're having the crisis, you know, but to preempt it, right? So once you get started with it during a race, you just kind of keep going. Can lead to some GI issues from time to time.
I can imagine. We've seen some famous material, unfortunately. Paula Radcliffe at a moment, I think. Not too.
Very famous. But they say you haven't truly pushed yourself in distance running until you have a Paula Radcliffe-like moment.
Paula Radcliffe. I pray that day never comes. Dare I ask, have you had a Paula Radcliffe moment?
I have not during the race, but awfully close. To the point where I had to, sprint through the finish line straight towards a wonderful porta potty, which had already been used by thousands of runners by that point.
Your marathon was a bit longer.
Exactly. Didn't even have time to stop the watch at the finish line. It was such a crisis. So,
no hugs, no.
But I've had various running mates and friends that have had it. And even a bit earlier on in the race. And some have had to get into taxis afterwards. Let's...
Okay. I think we can spare the listener any more detail, but wow. Well, from energy drinks to energy gels to Paula Radcliffe's, here we are.
Exactly. Paula, if you want to come on to the pod at any point to tell us about your experience.
Let's hear her side of the story.
Exactly. You know what? We're here. We are a balancing act on this podcast. There are no conspiracy theories here.
Well, on that note, I think we have warmed up just enough and we're ready to move into our proper meaty postulation of this episode, which is a dinger of a topic. So from last week, the listeners who have been listening week by week will know we've been talking a lot about film. And in the aftermath of last week's episode, we both kind of came away ready to talk a bit more about the state of film more broadly. Some big reflections that we took away. You might remember from the episode, there was a couple of moments as well. We looked back at a certain year in particular. But without further ado, we're going to get into that. Listeners, strap in. It is going to be a big one and looking forward to it. So you ready, Nicola?
It's going to be a wild ride.
We'll be back after the break.
All right, welcome back, listeners, to Lost in Postulation. As Neil mentioned, we are talking about the current state of film, of movies, of the cinema in general, particularly pertaining to Hollywood, but we'll also touch a bit upon something other than that. So where does this come from, right? So Neil and I, we were planning to do an episode on biopics today, in fact, and based on a true story, movies. We got together to compile a list of based on a true story movies we had seen to start to have that as a basis for discussion and for postulations. And then that list, we were looking at it and we noticed that there was almost nothing in it from the last 3 or 4 years.
Nada.
It was uncanny, right? And then I went to sleep that night, and it's almost like I had an epiphany. And the next morning, not to give my thinking too much importance, because many people have said parts of this postulation we're going to get into.
Right.
But this epiphany where I was like, where the hell are we with movies? That you and I, two lovers of the cinema, of the movies, of film, are not liking much of what's been coming out.
There's just no pull. There's nothing making me go, oh, gotta get into the cinema to see that one, or even just gotta sit down and watch that one. I really miss it. Yeah. I'm with you 100%.
Exactly. So we have, there's a big gap there. So I think let's try to, postulate through this together. Let's do it live in terms of what we think, are the core drivers of this, what's wrong with cinema, where we can dig back into, for example, the great year of 2019 to see what flashes there were in the pan there and how can we make a proposal to fix this.
100%. And I guess the usual caveat applies, which is that we are not professional film reviewers, film critics, what have you. I don't believe either of us have been educated on this topic whatsoever. So I guess the point is we don't presuppose to know everything or indeed anything about this topic other than our own opinions. And let's frame it in that context that, we are just two more voices into the void here. And we also want to hear the listeners' thoughts on this.
Would you say you're more of an expert on financial advice or on the state of Hollywood?
I would say I'm equally ignorant within those two topics.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I really I don't rate myself as an expert in basically anything. So take that, listener, with a pinch of salt, maybe.
Except for Austria.
Well, as we saw. That was a passing grade, by the way. That was 40%. In the quiz last episode, I got...
I really don't know what kind of schools you went to where 40% was a passing grade, but...
That is a passing grade. In
40%?
Ireland.
Less than half of the
That's a D-.
All right. Well, whatever helps you sleep at night.
It certainly does.
It's certainly not the state of Hollywood that helps you sleep at night because, Neil, I've lined up 3 lists that I'm going to read to you. I'll pause after each one to get your initial reaction. And we're going to use those 3 lists as the basis for this discussion.
Sounds good.
List number 1. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Coda. Nightmare Alley. Don't Look Up. Dune. Drive My Car. Belfast. Licorice Pizza. The Power of the Dog. West Side Story. King Richard. It goes on. Nomadland. Sound of Metal. Mank. Minari. Promising Young Woman. The Father. Judas and the Black Messiah. The Trial of the Chicago 7.
Okay.
That's list number 1.
Okay. And I think most kind of up-to-date film fans will probably know that list. You didn't clear this with me in advance, but I'm fairly sure this is the Best Picture nominees from 2021 and 2022
Yes,
combined,
correct.
Right? Yeah.
Indeed.
Cool.
Indeed.
And I have to say, we were about to talk about the state of cinema and maybe be negative, but actually there were some good movies in there.
There's some good stuff there, right? So, I mean, we've had some Trial of the Chicago 7, Sorkin, Judas and the Black Messiah. I enjoyed. I went to see Minari, fine. But we also have, Don't Look Up. I mean,
what happened?
We like Adam McKay, but why the hell is that nominated for an Oscar?
It's just a mess. Yeah, but that says a lot about the year we had, right?
Right,
this
exactly.
Was,
so that's list number 1. We'll get into what that means a bit more broadly.
Okay.
List number 2. Are you ready?
I think so.
Avatar: The Way of Water. Top Gun: Maverick.
The colons are going to be a big feature of this list.
Jurassic World: Dominion. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. No colon.
Oh.
Minions: The Rise of Gru. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. The Batman.
Oh yeah.
No colon.
No colon. that would
But
ruin it. Yeah.
Thor: Love and Thunder. Watergate Bridge.
No colon. Bizarre.
No, also no name recognition whatsoever.
No, true.
But made $626 million worldwide at the box office. And I'm going to round you off with 2. Moon Man and Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore.
Oof. That's a painful list to listen to, isn't it? Okay, so I guess this is top grossing 2022, like the
worldwide box office.
Yeah. Okay, that is depressing. Surely, like there's not a good movie in there.
The Rise of the Colon.
Yeah, 100%. There's a year of the colon. Jesus
Just call
Christ.
them Avatar 2.
Do
Jurassic
anything.
World 25. Why do we need that colon?
This is what people are shelling out for. If you put in a colon, and people are like twice as likely to go see it. Apparently.
Yeah. So almost everything in that list. About 9 out of 11 of those.
Sequels or franchises,
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Jeez.
Avatar, The Way Home.
Way of the Water, even.
Grossed $1.7 billion. And it only came out towards the end of 2020.
Have you seen it?
I have not seen it yet.
I mean, and again, this is what I'm saying. I have no desire to see it.
I honestly, I couldn't care less. Yeah. James Cameron, yeah, fine, whatever. But why, if I'm gonna spend the money to go to the cinema, I want something, a bit original. But we'll get into that with our postulations.
Okay.
I have a final list for you, Neil.
Okay, hit me.
And this is a bit of a different spin. It's not film titles. Okay. It's people. Huh. Reese Witherspoon, Jennifer Aniston, Anne Hathaway, Jared Leto, Taron Egerton, Brian Cox, John Bernthal, Kevin Costner, Kate Winslet, Gary Oldman, Miles Teller, Jeremy Renner, and Olivia Colman.
So this one I might not actually get because there's a few ways to interpret this list. These are all Oscar-nominated actors, as far as I know, or some of them. A lot of them are, right?
Yeah, some of them have been,
and some of them haven't. So I see that too. And a lot of them appear in some of the Oscar movies in the last couple of years, for sure. Like Olivia Colman won Best Actress from The Favourite a few years ago. But then again, a lot of these have been appearing in TV shows rather than movies. So is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because I know like some of those names, like Jennifer Aniston, did some really nice new TV, right? Which was actually well received and like really good.
So this is a list of A-listers that have starred in a series in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
In at least one season of a series.
Wow.
Those names.
Jeez, I mean
Kate Winslet.
That's the gang. I mean, the gang's all here. These are like the big actors of Hollywood, right?
And and they're not making feature films.
No, I mean they're probably doing like one a year and then doing a series. And I wonder, is there more money for them in series these days? I don't know. Guess it depends on the movie. But yeah, jeez, stark.
That's something, right? So if we put these three things together, right?
Yeah.
One, we have the Oscars and the Academy clutching at straws, seemingly being more out of touch than ever, trying to pretend like they're in touch, seemingly having no clue what they're doing. Just random stuff, right? And you see that through their nominations, but potentially also a problem not only of their own making, just not having much to go for, right?
Well, on that topic though, pausing a bit on the Oscars specifically, how much do we think that COVID has actually had the impact here? Like, because we're going to talk about 2019 being a good year.
Right.
And obviously we all know what happened in 2020. And given the long production time of movies, isn't there probably like a knock-on of COVID still here where just it wasn't much being made. There was just less money to go around. There was less kind of projects being funded, you know?
So what worries me is there was a huge postponement of stuff that was already in post-production at the onset of COVID.
That like Tenet, for example, which like, didn't get released until COVID was kind of...
Or Top Gun Maverick, which was then released 3 years later, basically, after it was finished.
Okay.
Bond as well, whatever. So that stuff has now all come about. And in the meantime, we're not just looking at 1 year of data, right? At the second year... where then production was also up and running everywhere, that we're still having that trend, that's what starts to worry me a little bit, right? And also looking already in 2019, it seemed like a flash in the pan year. We'll get into what those movies were, but there was already all the rhetoric about streaming versus being in the cinema, all of this, right? So yes, I think COVID plays a role, but I think... where the Academy might want to, and Hollywood producers might want to hide behind COVID and Corona as a reason for this. I think there's something much more fundamental.
Jeez. So I guess the first conclusion you can draw is when you put these lists side by side, right? Yeah. Especially list 1 and 2, you see what makes money, sequels and franchises. What wins awards, very average movies. Not necessarily the two. Like we don't actually see the top grossing movies landing in the Best Picture list, right? At least from what I can see, there's not like each year there's one big kind of movie that comes through into Best Picture nominations. But actually, a lot of the Best Picture nominations are either a bit indie and they explode after a film festival or something, or they're foreign movies. Like Parasite did its thing, and
that's another interesting postulation. Which
indeed.
We'll
so when we were going over and back about this, we talked about, is this an issue with cinema or is this an issue with American cinema? Because that's what the Oscars really is. I mean, Parasite being the first foreign movie to win Best Picture is surely a testament to that, right? But I don't know. I think it's so multifaceted, this problem. But I think what's depressing to me, what's most depressing, is that the money talks here, right? And that what audiences are willing to pay for in increasingly high numbers is sequels and franchises. And I just don't get it. I don't know why those have such a pull, but...
I think what it's done also is we've lost that in-between film, right? So if we look at the Oscars, like you said, more artsy, independent things winning, right? We look at the box office, it's I mean, the death of creativity, essentially. All franchise, all colon movies. I'm going to start calling them colon movies, actually, because that's what they deserve.
Adequate.
And that's where the money is, right? I mean, it's making any film is a gamble, right? To a large extent, you don't know if it's going to hit when you make it. The fact that it doesn't hit doesn't then necessarily make it a bad film. But if it's not received, that ROI calculation is quite, it's quite a steep ladder, right? So I understand why it's moving that way in terms of money. But what this has done, these two dynamics, is essentially we've lost this film that's in between. This film in between being the classic, 2-hour drama or biopic or based on a true story, because the hit ratio of that for its budget is a lot riskier than the blockbuster, while at the same time you have on the other end of the spectrum the sort of indie films and so on and so forth, and especially foreign films, which don't necessitate as big a budget for that. Now, what I think where that has migrated towards is we've seen TV going from being this linear medium of, every week and so on and so forth, to the advent of Netflix, binge watch everything right away, multi-year series, to now the creation of this miniseries, which I think bridges the gap and kind of steals that, right?
Yeah.
You look at the shows. I mean, I mentioned Kate Winslet, for example, Mayor of Easttown. That's a classic one. It was a 5 or 6 episode miniseries, right? Which is a much smaller commitment for audiences than, a 5-season, 20 episode a season series, but it's something that they can do in one weekend and that they can do at their own pace, right? And it's still, a 6.5 hours instead of 2, so they can pick up their phone and miss 5 minutes and, not be fully out of it, which they can do in that 2-hour film. So that's what I think is a bit my postulation on what's happening here, is that, and it's not fun because that middle film is what's gotten me into movies since I was an adolescent, basically, right?
Exactly.
So those are basically dying a slow and painful death, it seems, and they're being replaced by these miniseries. And you see that also by let's not call it an exodus, because these actors do go back and forth, but 20 years ago, a Kate Winslet, a Gary Oldman, I mean, look at these names, and Anne Hathaway, they would have never done quote unquote TV.
And even Gandolfini doing Sopranos, or
that was a steal.
Yeah, Dominic doing The Wire, right? These are like guys who probably weren't as big as they should have been at that time, as we talked about before. And they were like, we look back now and thinking, wow, what an A-lister that they had in that show. But it was the show that made them an A-lister, right? So I don't think it's fair to say that TV has historically been a place where A-listers go to advance their career, right? But there was one thing that occurred to me as you were going through that there, and I wonder, is this another postulation linked to this? And I kind of referenced it in one of our earlier episodes, talking about Squid Game a bit. Have you noticed, and maybe I'm just off base here, but let me know what you think. Have we got to a point with series where we all have just decided that at a given time, there's one series that we are all watching, And for better or worse, it's like right now it's White Lotus, it seems like. That's
fantastic.
That's the one that everyone is like, have you seen White Lotus? Have you seen White Lotus? Have you seen White Lotus?
Have you seen
No,
White
I haven't
Lotus?
seen White Lotus. Stop asking me. But
Watch White Lotus.
thanks, you're the freaking 90th person to tell me. So, but the thing is, everyone's passionate about it. Everyone's like, oh, it's so good, it's amazing. It was Chernobyl a while ago during COVID, if you remember that. Great miniseries, as we're talking about miniseries, right? But then it came and went. We all forgot about it. Like Chernobyl, we all saw it. It was great. Did you see it?
Yeah, I watched. I told you to watch it, and you told me, oh, I don't like it's. They're saying the Russian
English.
People, but they have British accents.
I stand by that. It didn't need that. Seriously, they could have just gotten Russian actors. This is ridiculous. Anyway, but at that time, that was mandatory viewing, almost socially. Like, to show up at the office, you needed to have at least watched these things. When House of the Dragon came out, there was a few people who, like, every Monday were asking me at work, like, have you seen House of the Dragon? What do you think of House of the Dragon? I know, and so that's one that you don't want to partake in, right? But the issue seems to be that each TV series now being produced wants to be that it show that kind of gets its massive peak. If you search for it on Google Trends, you'll see this like an exponential peak and then a quick disappearance. And it's like, that's it. That's the best you can hope for, right? It's like the TikTok effect of what TikTok does to music.
All right.
You know, HBO and Netflix are now doing to series, where rather than it having like a slow burn like The Wire did or Sopranos did, where it like garnered increasing viewers over from series to series, it's now like you want to just be that flash in the pan, instant hit show. That's the best you can hope for.
Yeah.
And then they're being built around that a bit. So it's like, hey, look what famous person we have in it. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Like White Lotus. Oh, look, we have the guy from The Sopranos in it. Or we have
Michael Imperial.
Yeah,
Christopher.
Now 50 or something years old. Written
Still
by,
looks great.
By the way, written by Ned Schneebly from School of Rock, for the people who don't know.
Yes, exactly.
Huge.
Mike White, the legend.
And sorry, very quick side note, because we just had the Golden Globes, right? And Mike White won quite a few awards, I think, for White Lotus. And
well deserved.
He wasted no time in getting on stage and ripping into every actor who turned down a role in White Lotus.
Oh, I gotta watch this.
He said something to the effect of, "You all turned it down," like pointing at the.
Good job, Mike.
And
Good on you.
And if you look at the cast, it is like, you know, not exactly like top tier. And they all came away with awards as well. So amazing. But anyway, sorry, side point. I think all I'm trying to say here is like, yes, we've noticed a clear trend, which is films now to make money are either sequels or franchises. My concern is series now are also kind of gearing themselves towards being viral hits, right? Where it's like, how can we become the talk of the town? How can we be a bit more out there, a bit more kind of viral, a bit more topical, you know? And I hope that doesn't catch on, because I would rather something just gets made for its own sake and it's like a story that somebody wants to tell, or it's an interesting topic or a new take on something, and don't worry about the viral success so much, you know? But like there's every day or every week we hear about this is cancelled or that's cancelled by Netflix or HBO. So that's more where I'm going. But
yeah. I mean, credit to HBO more than Netflix where it's due, where their series are more prestige and more quality overall, right? They're really going for those 4 or 5 big bangs a year, right? And consistent in that, whereas Netflix is just throwing as much shit at the wall and seeing what sticks.
It's so depressing, Netflix. Jeez,
I debate canceling it every month that rolls over. But I mean, now I think what that says, and that's quite worrisome what you say there, because you're saying essentially even the series aren't going to fill this gap between the blockbuster and the indie film anymore. It leads actually to the other point that I know you're quite keen on making, which is the one about international cinema. And that's quite interesting because I can tell you when I was growing up in the US, I mean, no chance that 20 years ago someone would watch a film in another language with English subtitles at home, let alone in a cinema. I mean, you would find it in one big city in an independent cinema, maybe. Whereas now, I mean, Parasite, worldwide hit even before it won an Oscar, right? 100%. And we're seeing more and more of these, and they're being appreciated.
I have 2 points actually to make on foreign films, or let's say ways of watching films in general, right? One thing that has become standard in our home, and maybe yours as well, is every single thing we watch is with subtitles now.
Original language.
Yes, but even things in English, right? And the reason for that initially was that my girlfriend is not in native English speaking, right?
Right.
Now, she's obviously amazing.
We have the same with Maria.
Exactly, right? And I kind of, it doesn't matter to me, so I turn them on, right? But I noticed that my focus and my enjoyment of basically everything has gone way, way up. And I can even give a specific example. You've seen Tenet, of course. I think we saw Tenet.
We saw it together, yeah. It was the film to save the cinema, summer of 2020, post-COVID. Insert sound effect.
Didn't really work. Yeah, actually, replace my sound effect with a real one there. But that's a good example of a film who, we all know Christopher Nolan's tendency to mix sound like crazy, you know? But there's entire scenes in that film which are like... And you're supposed to just be like reacting to the emotions or whatever, right? But if you turn on the subtitles, it actually has the dialogue there.
Yeah.
Like, so it's not that you are supposed to hear it, right? And my understanding, like, it's still a hard movie to understand, but like my enjoyment of it actually went way up. And I highly recommend it for anything, just as a side note, right? the point, I guess, looping back to the main where this came from, was we're talking about how nobody 30 years ago was going to the cinema to watch a subtitle movie.
No.
Actually, I can distinctly remember conversations where people were like, wait, does that movie have subtitles? No, I'm
People
not.
speak a language other than English? What the hell?
I'm not going to read for 3 hours. Like, no, but whatever, like, I think what we've realized is like, you get past that within the first minute, 2 minutes, and then you forget about it, right? And then you don't even notice you're doing it, and then you get to see things like Parasite. I know we keep coming back to Parasite, but on this topic as well, though, I wanted to give a shout out to a movie I saw last weekend, which I have to highly, highly recommend if anybody hasn't seen it. Triangle of Sadness, directed by Ruben Östlund. And why do I bring this up? It's a great movie, and it's very original and has some problems. It's been criticized for being a bit too on the nose satirically. Yeah. I don't care. I think it's brilliant. But I watched, after we saw it, we watched a roundtable with the actors and the director, Ruben. And he's an absolute legend, by the way. Like, he's one of those real directors who's just like a normal, chill guy. And he's like, we wanted to make a movie that was like worth giving up your evening for and going out and seeing it. And, we got to pay the bills. We got to get bums in seats, basically. We got to get people to see it. But we also want to say something with it.
Yes.
So Ruben, I think, has the right idea, which is we're not here to, objective number one, make as much money as possible. And B, we're not here to tell the coolest story possible and who gives a crap about the money. It's all about that sweet spot. And right now, I think films have fallen all the way to column A, where it's like, what's my soundest return on investment? And I guess money is tied, and it makes sense. For example, talk about milking the cash cow. But I also think, I don't want to see it go the other way either. Like, films have to be profitable. They have to draw a crowd. They have to be intriguing. I just think we're so far from that now. But I hope that we can see more directors like Ruben Östlund, who has exactly the right idea, and foreign director, right? Swedish. Yeah.
Swedish. And funny you should mention Ruben Östlund. Have you seen from a few years ago, Force Majeure? This other independent film.
I need to go watch it, actually.
That's where I learned about him. I think maybe 7-8 years ago, that film. And it is, they did a remake with it with, I think it's with Will Ferrell and Julia Dreyfus. I mean, I didn't even bother to see that because I just love the original so much.
Okay, yeah.
And that's another trend that's coming in, right? It's like, we love subtitles, whatever, but then there's an English, Coda, which won the Oscar last year, was a remake of a Belgian French film, for example. So, but anyways, Force Majeure, fantastic story of this Swedish family that is on a mountain holiday in France, in the Alps, and there's an avalanche all of a sudden, and the father kind of runs away, and the rest of the movie kind of deals with this dynamic, and really solid. I haven't seen Triangle of Sadness yet. Everyone in my family has seen it except for me, so I'm really eager to get out there. And I heard that there is a 15-minute scene or so with everybody. Spoiler alert, I guess, but I didn't even know it. Puking. Yeah.
Not just that. Yeah.
Every
all bodily fluids are involved.
It's fantastic.
It is outrageous, and if anyone's thinking of going to see it and doesn't know anything about it, don't Google anything about it. Just go see it without knowing, because it's really a ride. It's a roller coaster. But we're not a film review podcast. Let's get away from this particular.
Exactly.
But more to illustrate my point that foreign film is more and more increasingly the way to go for various reasons. Maybe it's that funding is more readily available from government sources. That, like, the Film Board of Ireland, for example, supported the creation of Banshees of Inisherin, which is now about to win Best Picture for
with Colin Farrell.
Yeah. The man, about to win Best Actor, potentially.
Your favorite actor, would you say?
One of my favorite Irish actors.
Okay.
And he's one of the guys that on screen, I think I like him. Off screen, he's an absolute legend. Like, if you watch him in interviews, he's just another, speaking of real ones,
Colin Farrell.
He's a down-to-earth guy. And even more so as he ages. He had his wild period, as we all know. Yeah. But look at him on Hot Ones. He did an episode of Hot Ones with Sean Evans where they eat the hot wings. Yeah. He was amazing on that. A few days ago, there was an actors roundtable with basically all the actors that are about to be nominated for Best Actor. So
The Hollywood Reporter? Or?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Okay. So they did like a conversation, and without being overbearing and without being domineering, Colin really kind of leads it and gives credit where it's due and calls out the performances that he really liked and stuff. So
good for him for sticking with it, because he's gotten a lot of flack over the years, right? Anytime something wouldn't go great,
100%.
Good for him.
Like when he did, what was it? It wasn't Troy, but no, what was the one he did?
He did In Bruges, he did The Way Back.
No, but what was the Hollywood crappy blockbuster? It wasn't Troy, I don't think, but it was Alexander the Great. He did.
Oh, gosh.
Oliver Stone directed.
Yeah.
So that was horrible. And he actually talks about it in the interview that they got absolutely slated. And he was like, I got found out. I'm a fraud. I shouldn't be an actor, etc.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, 100%. And he took that away and came back infinitely stronger as an actor, I think. And then did In Bruges, and here we are.
Okay. Well, there you go. There you have it. The state of cinema, the state of Colin Farrell. Can I leave you with one last thing, a bit of reminiscing?
Absolutely.
Some indulgement on my side. One last list.
Oh.
Parasite.
Oh.
1917. Ford versus Ferrari. Joker. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh my God.
The Irishman. Little Women. Jojo Rabbit. Marriage Story.
Literally banger after banger. Like
4 years ago. Oh,
it's not that long. Is that 18 or 19, that one?
That's 19, and then it was the 2020
movies.
Oscar. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. Okay, so they were released in 19. Just literally not a dud movie in there. Like absolute bangers.
And testament is that you and I were going to the cinema that year at least twice a month.
We had to catch up. We were like, the list came out and we were like, we have to see all of these. Like,
Yeah.
And Denmark gets them a bit later, so some of them we had to wait for.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
not one of those movies do I regret seeing. Even JoJo, which is kind of the weaker on that list, I suppose. Like,
Yeah.
watched it, loved it. Like, every single thing has its merits, you know.
It was what a year, and some gambles taken also. I mean, the Joker, Todd Phillips doing that. You know,
Over
Ford versus
remake.
Ferrari, we enjoyed it. It was just Damon versus Bale. 1917, fantastic. Seemed like it was in one shot, right?
Yeah, amazing.
And Parasite, I mean,
Just remains to be beaten to this day. I think if anyone listening hasn't seen Parasite, you need to do yourself a favor and go watch it. It is. I've seen it 3 times. I absolutely love it.
and yes, Neil gets a commission from Bong Joon-ho every time he
Kickbacks.
mentions
Oh,
this movie.
the kickbacks. I think I need to put like an embargo on it now for a few episodes. Like
You
if
watched
I-
that one without subtibtles though now, right?
Oh, for sure.
Fluent in Korean.
You got to really feel the emotion of the Korean. But like even on that list, by the way, 2 Netflix movies, like Marriage Story, not Once Upon a Time, but Marriage Story and one
The
more.
Irishman,
And The
actually.
Irishman, yeah, Netflix.
Yeah.
We could get into The Irishman because I think that's a movie that gets worse the more you see it. But
Yeah, I haven't seen it in 2 years now.
nobody wants to watch it a second time. That's the problem.
Well, it's also, you have to block off like an entire weekend to be able to watch
Exactly.
it. So,
Somebody posted online, and so this is a bit off topic, but somebody posted how to watch The Irishman as a series, and they tell you when to pause it and when to, come back. So it's like 40 minutes here, 30 minutes there.
I think I'm going to keep my good memory of it.
Yeah,
And just
yeah,
not revisit it.
Magical moment. Well, there you go. Jeez.
Fantastic.
2019, bring it back. Yeah.
But do you remember? Yes, the last sidebar, that was a Netflix original, but it had a pre-release in cinema.
We went to see it in the
We
cinema.
went to see it with a whole group. And you remember what happened at the end credits of the film?
Oh, not specifically, actually.
You were quite embarrassed. I stood up
I
and
do.
gave the film a standing ovation
Standing
in the
O.
middle of the scene.
You kind of expected a few more people to join you on that one.
I kind of had to force them, but I managed to get a row.
I think that was brave. Like, this isn't Sundance, this isn't Cannes. We don't do this here in Denmark, but...
Can they just boo, basically? don't they?
Exactly. Jeez.
Yeah, or whistle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's the current state of the cinema. I think it's more of a kickoff. We'll keep coming back to this throughout the year. I think also as we delve into.
We're just going to
new
be
movies.
waiting for a savior. We're waiting for some amazing movie to come along and save this year. Because I mean, so far it's early days for 23, but I just don't see anything.
Creed 3.
Here we go. There's
Michael
another-
B's directing it.
Oh, he's not in it now, or he is.
No,
both?
he's also in it.
Jeez.
But he's
Not a
directing.
fan of
He's
that.
doing that Bradley Cooper thing. Clint, they all want to be Clint.
They do, and some of them will, but not all of them.
No. Well, there you have it. So we'll take a short break and then we'll come back with a postulation from a listener.
Can't wait. All right, we are back once again and on, as promised, to our listener mailbag. We asked and you guys delivered, or at least one of you did, and the first of what is hopefully many. So some of you might remember, the ones who are religiously listening from week to week, back in episode 4, I took a stab at solving the ongoing Will Smith-Chris Rock feud, beef, what have you, however you want to call it. I took my honest stab at it. It was emotional. You can go back and listen to the full thing, but I basically had a strategy around using the magic of Christmas and the Muppets Christmas Carol to solve the beef.
Spellbinding stuff. And don't forget, coining the term, which Henry Kissinger would be proud of himself, Parmesan diplomacy.
Parmesan diplomacy. I'll leave it to you to go back and find out, dear listener, what that means. But we have had strong reactions to that, and none more so than Graham O'Hara, our good buddy back in Ireland. And he has been listening religiously since the start, back in the early days of last December. And he has actually sent in, and this is a format I didn't even think that we could do, but it actually makes perfect sense. He has sent in a voice note. We communicate often over WhatsApp using voice notes. And why not just include his postulation here on the show? So we're going to drop it in here now, and we're going to give our take on it straight after. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the virtual voice note of Graham O'Hara.
Fantastic.
Hello, Nicola and Neil. Graham here, long time listener, first time voice note submitter. I wanted to send in, I guess, a response to something that was said on the pod. In a previous episode, it was a postulation by Neil around this scenario where he finds himself on a flight from Singapore to New York, where he's abandoned his girlfriend after receiving a first class ticket, just in a heartbeat. And he finds himself sat between none other than Chris Rock and Will Smith, kind of caught between a rock and a hard-bodied Will Smith, if you will. So he then receives a text from the US government, if I recall, saying that unless he can resolve their differences, he will be fingered for a murder. I imagine there's a few winky smiley faces in that message, because obviously he hasn't committed this murder, which just sort of makes the situation slightly worse. So that's his incentive. Now, speaking of incentives, right, he did also mention that Chris Rock has been very quiet about the whole situation, that Will Smith is on TV sort of trying to, smooth over his image and saying, loads, whereas Chris Rock's just been like, nope, not saying a word, joking that he'll do his big Netflix Meghan and Harry documentary one day. Now, I think that's key to why there's a massive flaw in the logic. So Neil talked about how he would sit there, watch Muppets Christmas Carol, he would offer the Parmesan diplomacy and sort of just ingratiate himself to these people slowly while also not being involved, and then eventually he would say what he says, and then they all kiss and make up. Now, I think that it's actually possible to get those two to privately reconcile. I think it's all on Chris Rock to just say, hey man, I understand what you're going through, and while there's no justification to slap someone, we all do mad things when we're under pressure, etc., etc. It'd be a very beautiful thing. I think they'd land and it would all be great. However, I think Neil would walk off that plane thinking he'd done right, but there was one important detail, was that the US economy is struggling, which is the most important thing, right? Capitalism is under threat, consumerism, all that stuff. And what he needs to do is make them publicly reconcile for the good of the economy. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they will privately reconcile, but there's too much incentive for Chris Rock to still do his Netflix program, which he has done nothing after the slap. So he needs to do that to get the money, and therefore the feud needs to publicly continue. And I don't think Neil can get around that. So since he's already going to go down for a murder, I think he may as well do the right thing. Now, I'm not saying which of the two he should murder, but murdering one of them would resolve the beef. Now, it's sort of like the train situation where you have a train coming down the track, and if it goes left, it kills one person. If it goes right, it kills multiple people, and you have the choice of sending it left or right. It's really hard to decide. So I'm going to leave it to the guys to postulate on which of Will Smith or Chris Rock dies. And there is an option C there. You can't just go up and crash the plane. I think they both die, and it's very unfortunate. And there's nothing like a celebrity death to really stir up an economy. Like, this is like, you think Morocco has soft power there with the World Cup and things like that. I think America, with its hard power, can flex its sympathy muscles there. And a sympathy dollar is a very strong market. So I think choose wisely there. But I just love to see a postulation or a repostulation on this with that particular detail sort of focused on. So I'll leave it back to you lads, the experts in these things. I'm merely an amateur postulator, but I aspire to be like you guys one day, and I love what you do, and I keep doing what you're doing, and fair play, and slán a while.
Wow. Thank you, Graham O'Hara from Ireland. That is quite a counter postulation, and I mean, what this podcast will go down for is the Chris Rock, Will Smith conflict resolution. This just keeps going on.
This is potentially the most that anything has ever escalated ever, like in the shortest period of time.
Wow.
1 minute you're listening along to the story, and then it's like, oh, okay, and then as we heard, oh wow, okay.
Yeah, I mean, from a logical perspective, and Graham, what you said makes a logical sense. I'm a bit awestruck, I have to say.
You're lost for words here.
Yeah, I really am. He really took your Parmesan diplomacy and flipped it on the side of its head. And,
Yeah, absolutely did.
proposed something potentially much more sustainable in a sense.
Well, what I like about this postulation, if I can be so bold, is Graham has really dug into the context, the starting point of the postulation, and really solved it from there, because he has said, okay, the US government is going to imprison me unless I solve this,
Right.
and their incentive is economic growth or prosperity, right? And he's like, if I don't solve that, then the thing's not solved.
Right.
Whereas when we talked about it, we were like, how do we get these two guys to be buddies again, So it's an example of where the listener can, more accurately or more, scientifically, let's say, postulate in a way that is even more accurate to the definition of postulation.
Right. And he's really, the results orientation is amazing, right?
It's ruthless.
Yeah.
I'll give it that.
Yeah.
It's not the strategy I would personally choose. And if he was here with us, I would probably ask, is there a way that I can get away with this without actually,
Right.
Is it going to be a poisoning scenario? I also wonder, even if by continuing this conversation, are we on the verge of breaching any federal laws? So I also want to, stray on the side of caution here. But suffice to say, it is definitely a viable alternative if the strategy is simply to end the beef between these two guys publicly.
Yeah.
So on that basis, we have to give it 5 stars on that basis.
That's unreal. And I think the next one for you, Graham, will be how do you deal with the fallout of the royal family after the release of Harry's autobiography? We'd love to hear from you and any listener on that. Neil has actually already read through the book 3 times.
I'm on
in
a
just
fourth.
1 week.
You really got to pick up the nuance on the 4th time. Yeah.
Big fan of the royal family.
Not a royalist. You can put it that way. Not a fan of what Mr. H is up to at the moment, and
Can we touch upon that real quick? Where I'm a bit lost is, and maybe Graham and any listener can clear this up for us, because we're just not there. Maybe Harry's smarter than the rest of us. You break off all relations with your family, move to the other side of the world, claiming you want privacy for your nuclear family and your kids, out of the limelight of, the tabloids, the media, whatever. And then you proceed to, release just way too long of, what was it, a 2-part, 6-episode documentary, which I started watching with Maria one Saturday. And after 30 minutes, we turned to each other. We said, maybe we should just go take a nap. More effective use of our time. Indulgent, making us want to feel sorry for you. Sorry we don't, because just lived a life of privilege, and yes, sure, some of the stuff you've gone through isn't great, and then you get an autobiography ghostwritten for you by a great author, by the way, who ghostwrote Andre Agassi's autobiography as well. A sidebar, but you just wanted to live your own life outside of the spotlight and not be in the public eye. Seems like. And the proceeds of this book aren't going to charity. Let's remember that.
They're not, or they're
not.
They're specifically not.
Or not that I've heard, at least. So, what the hell are you doing, man?
This is an interesting one, because what's triggering you here is the hypocrisy, right?
Yeah.
Because I think if he had said from the start, I'm about to go make way more money by doing my own thing, I'd almost have a bit more...
At least it's consistent
and
it's honest.
Yeah. But obviously nobody could say that. That's completely, unacceptable to say. But it's kind of, I think a lot of people are having the same reaction. What I am enjoying, though, is if you go on Twitter now, you can see people are taking snippets of the audiobook out of context. But this book really goes all sorts of places. And
it airs out a lot of dirty laundry. Something that I'm not a fan of in general.
For sure.
Then to do it about you and your brother and stuff like that.
Talk about burning bridges, yeah. I mean, the whole thing to me is just the less I think about it, the better. And there are days and weeks when I go weeks without thinking about this group, this family, and I notice that I'm a markedly happier person when I do. So it's it's an aspect, and obviously I'm a bit biased being Irish, and we have our own, cultural context and biases against the royal family and the UK more broadly. But not that I love the UK, by the way, nothing against it. But
Big fan.
Love you, yeah. But I guess all of that to say, like, how I feel about this isn't like a necessarily huge postulation or an original take, but I also think it's kind of like the more I talk about it, the more I'm giving oxygen to the fire that is this particular topic. So I'm like,
you're right.
I'm like, the less said, the better about these people.
Let's not bring that toxicity into Lost in Postulation.
Let's be negative about other things.
Yeah. You can go listen to 4,000 other podcasts about
100%
about that
just
kind of
about
stuff
this
if you want.
topic. Yeah.
Oh yeah, certainly.
But that leaves me on a course of wondering then. So we've just successfully postulated, or let's say we have postulated about things that we're unhappy with, right?
Yeah.
Film as it stands today, harkening back to a better time. We've had to, rag on the royal family now a little bit. Yeah. So what I want to commit to is for next time, we need to find something to be positive about to balance out all this postulative negativity that we have brought.
Right. And being positive about your 40% score on the Austria pub quiz extravaganza
difficult.
probably isn't enough.
I didn't give myself, I didn't set myself up for success there, that's for sure.
No, but let's do it. I think let's bring that balance in, and of course, listeners, any suggestions for topics going forward, we're all ears. We're gonna go back into the concept machine and start preparing things, and we'll be back.
We certainly will, but I think for now this is as good a time as any to wrap up. So thank you, Nicola Volpe.
Thank you, Neil Fitzpatrick, one of many sons of Patrick.
One of the best. Until next time, thank you. This has been Lost in Postulation.